Welcome to the Home Team, the show where no matter who you root for, here you're a part of the home team. My name is Wyatt Bagnall, and today we will be going over my predictions for Week 4 of the 2024 NFL season. My apologies for not being able to get anything out last week. I came down with a bug and was sort of put out of commission for a couple days, but going forward, I will be better about that. Before we jump in, hit like, hit subscribe, share the video to anybody you know who likes football. It would help out a ton. Much appreciated. So, jumping into my predictions for this weekend. Starting off, we have the New Orleans Saints going to Atlanta to take on the Falcons. And for any of you who know, the way I go about this is I go through each game and I go position by position and tell you who I think is better on each team. And then I'll tell you if I think that number actually reflects who's going to win, or if I think this is going to be one of those upset type games. So, New Orleans and Atlanta. Quarterback, Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins. I understand Derek Carr has played well to start the year and that the Saints are formidable, but I still think I would rather have Kirk Cousins. He seems to be sort of finding his way back, and a couple of games of Derek Carr playing really, really well is not going to be the thing that completely sways me. Running back. So, Alvin Kamara, Bijan Robinson. They both get a point for that. I think that running back is a strength of both teams, and they both utilize it. So, nobody's losing a point over that position. Wide receiver, same deal. They're kind of similar in that they have one guy that's pretty good, and then, or in the case of the Saints, very good with Chris Olave, and then pretty good with Drake London and the Saints. But other than that, they just sort of have a collection of decent guys. Like, they don't have a ton of superstars out there, but they don't have a whole lot of weaknesses out there either at that position. So same deal. Tight end, Foster Moreau, and then Kyle Pitts. I understand that Kyle Pitts is sort of statistically underperforming, but I believe he's still better than someone like Foster Moreau, who, while I have a lot of respect for him as a player, the ceiling of Kyle Pitts, if they could ever reach it, is still just so much higher. And when the Saints don't really utilize the position much either, I'll give it to the guy who's a little more talented. So offensive line, I'm actually going to give it to both teams. The Falcons' offensive line has become well known for being good, while the Saints' offensive line, while under talked about, has played quite good this year. So I'm going to give them both a point because it's been a strength for both teams. If anything, Atlanta's offensive line has underperformed a bit, but has sort of found its stride after week 1, essentially. Defensive line, that's going to the Saints. While the Falcons have Grady Jarrett and Matt Judon, it hasn't quite all come together yet for them, and the Saints have more guys with a higher ceiling. So I'm going to go with them on the defensive line. Linebackers, this would be a whole lot easier if Demario Davis was playing. He's missing his first game in his career, which I believe is 13 years, so very impressive. I'm still going to give the Saints the edge at linebacker because I think they're just better coached defensively on the whole right now. I think Raheem Morris needs more time to get the Falcons into that phase, and linebacker seems to be one of the toughest positions to play nowadays. So I'll go with the Saints. Defensive backs, I'm going to give them both a point for this because they both have strong secondaries in my eyes. The Falcons with A.J. Terrell and Justin Simmons and Jesse Bates, those are 3 really good ones. And then the Saints with Marshawn Lattimore and Tyrann Mathieu, Paulson Adebo, Kool-Aid McKinstry's played well as well too. So I think that they both have good secondaries. And head coach, I'm going to give the point to Dennis Allen just because more experience, even though I don't particularly have a whole lot of faith in Dennis Allen. But that's just sort of my rule. Until I really know what these rookie coaches are and get a good feel of how I think they manage the game and things like that, I'm going to give the advantage here to the guy who has a better grasp of this. So I'm going to go ahead and give that to New Orleans. So that brings the score to 7-7. And who do I think is going to win it? I think the Saints have played really well. And it's 7-7 also because I give whoever as at home, a home team advantage because they got the crowd with them and things like that. So it's 7-7 total. I'm going to take Atlanta, although admittedly, this is one of the games I am less confident in picking. I think these two teams are kind of similar. The Saints came out out this season with their hair on fire. And I think that overall, they started the year better. I think Atlanta's a little more desperate, and I think that they're a little more talented. But we'll see. This is one where I would not be shocked at all if you told me that New Orleans won this game. I just think that the desperation aspect is going to come in here because Atlanta does not want to fall to 1-3. All right, next up, the Rams. They go to Chicago to take on Caleb Williams and the Bears. So the Rams going to Chicago. The Bears have a home team advantage, and so they got one right there. So the Bears have Caleb Williams at quarterback, and the Rams have Matthew Stafford at quarterback. I'm going to give the point to Matthew Stafford. We all know how talented Caleb Williams is. You don't get a point just for being talented. You got to play well, and it hasn't happened yet, and Matthew Stafford's quite a good quarterback. Rams running back is Kyren Williams. Bears, DeAndre Swift. I'm going to go with Kyren Williams. DeAndre Swift has been disappointing for the Bears, to say the least. Wide receiver. This is an annoying one because if everybody was healthy, it would be the Rams. But they're not. And so DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, that gets the edge. This would be one where normally they would both get a point for being strong at the position. But with all the injuries, I can't give the Rams the tie there, unfortunately. Sorry, Rams fans. But unfortunately, health does have to play into this. Tight end. I'm giving this to the Bears with Cole Kmet. They don't utilize him quite enough, but the Rams don't really utilize their tight ends much either. They might, like Sean McVay is a very creative coach and could certainly do that given his situation right now with the receivers. But Cole Kmet is also just a good tight end. And then they got Gerald Everett as the other tight end. So they have two solid guys, if not game changers. So that's okay. Offensive line, this is another one, Rams fans. Cover your ears, where injuries have taken their toll. Rob Havenstein is back at right tackle, but the other tackle's out, and the interior is very young and not playing super well this year. And the Bears, also young and inconsistent, but they're at least they're at least middle of the pack across the board. Like Rob Havenstein's probably the best offensive lineman in this game in total, but the next couple guys would all be Bears guys. So I'm going to give the Bears the point there. Now this is one where if the Rams were healthy, they would just get the point outright, but we're just not at that place, unfortunately. Defensive line, I'm going to give them a tie here. Neither one has been elite, and neither one's been terrible. Montez Sweat is a very good player. And Jared Verse for the Rams has played well as a rookie, though he will have his moments where he's going to have to learn. I just think that the Bears all around are solid, and the Rams all around have a ton of potential. So I'm going to give them both that because neither one's hugely star-studded, but they both have one really good one and then solid. Linebackers, that is going to go to the Bears with Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards. They're both solid linebackers, and they played quite well. And defensive backs, that's going to the Bears as well. Jalen Johnson, Jaquan Brisker, Kevin Byard, they're playing quite well in the secondary. And honestly, the Bears defense is the entire reason that they are alive in these games, given how their offense is played. So the Bears defense is going to get quite a few points in this format because they're the main reason they're alive. Then head coach Sean McVay against Matt Eberflus. Sean McVay all day. Sean McVay is one of the best head coaches in the NFL, and I think Matt Eberflus is likely to be gone after this year. So that brings the point total to 4 for the Rams, 7 for the Bears, much of it being on health. I am still going to go out on a limb here and say that the Rams get it done, even though the Bears, if it was to all come together for the Bears in a game, it could definitely be against an injury-riddled Rams team, but I just have a lot of respect for Sean McVay and for Matthew Stafford, and I think they're going to be able to pull this together against a Bear team that is still finding its identity offensively. Now, the Bears defense, if they clamp down and really shut down the Rams offense, they got a shot, but it's going to have to be a hell of an effort. Week 4, Minnesota. Minnesota, who would have thought they'd be 3-0 right now, huh? Very impressive. So Minnesota goes to Green Bay and take on the Packers. Packers get the home team advantage. Quarterback, Sam Darnold playing at a great level. And I believe it's confirmed that Jordan Love will be back for this game. So they will field Jordan Love. I am going to give both of them a point here. Would I rather have Sam Darnold or Jordan Love? Jordan Love, 100%. But Sam Darnold has played so well, and Jordan Love is coming off an MCL sprain in his knee, and I don't 100% know if that's going to affect Jordan Love. So until I get a good look at Jordan Love post-knee injury, I'm going to say that they are probably a wash for now. Going forward, I think Jordan Love's the better player, but the way that Sam Darnold's playing mixed with the injury, I'm going to give them both a point there. Running back, they're also both going to get a point. Aaron Jones has played well for the Vikings, and Josh Jacobs has played well for the Packers. So I will give them both a point there. So I know that's a little bit boring that I've given out 2 ties essentially to start, but don't worry. There's only one more tie in this set. Wide receivers, I'm going with the Vikings. I think Justin Jefferson basically by himself is worth the Packers receiving core. Not to mention they're just well coached at that position and they play really well and they're just strong. Tight end, this is one where it's sort of not awesome either way right now until TJ Hawkinson gets back for the Vikings. Then the Vikings will be strong there also, which is scary. But I believe it's Tucker Kraft is the starter for the Packers there. More experienced. He was a rookie last year, but he's got some playing time under his belt. So I'm going to give the Packers the edge at tight end, even though it's not super great. Offensive line, that's going to the Vikings. They played very, very well. Christian Darrisaw in particular is a very, very good tackle. The Packers' offensive line is not a bad offensive line. They just don't have as much continuity over the past couple of years and even this season. So I'll give the Vikings the edge there. Defensive line, that's also going to the Vikings. I think Rashawn Gary's really good. I think Kenny Clark's really good for the Packers. But they just aren't playing up to it so far this year. Give it time. I'm sure that they'll round into form. They always do. The Packers are a team that the last couple of years, they haven't started great, but then they, like last year in particular. But even in the Matt Eberflus era in general, they get even better as the year goes on. So I'll trust that. But with the Vikings, you got Van Ginkel, you got Grenard, and they're playing very well with the Vikings. Linebackers, I'm also going to go with the Vikings. Ivan Pace is a very good linebacker for them. And Green Bay, this is almost more of an indictment on the Packers linebackers because I don't think the Vikings all around have an awesome linebacking core outside of Ivan Pace. But Quay Walker's really not played well for the Packers. Like, he's played like liability level bad. And so until that steps up and that spot isn't just a straight up weakness, it's going to be tough for Green Bay to have the edge at linebacker. Defensive backs, though, I am giving them the edge. Jair Alexander and Xavier McKinney in particular have played very well. Eric Stokes is back to playing well. So 3 out of the 4 are grading very well, and then the other safety is playing solid. Like, they don't have a weakness back there. And outside of Harrison Smith for the Vikings, they've got some guys that are playing like weaknesses. So I'll give the Packers the edge there. And then head coach, I would love to be able to make a distinction here and make a choice, but this is the last tie. I think the jobs that Kevin O'Connell and Matt Eberflus, I'm stupid, sorry, Matt LaFleur, still got the Bears on the mind. So Kevin O'Connell and Matt LaFleur, I think that they've both done an outstanding job. I think Matt LaFleur, since Aaron Rodgers has left, has really proved that he's one of the better coaches in the league. And I think Kevin O'Connell's done the same. So much respect to both of those coaches. There's a reason that these two organizations, even when they're hit with like difficult situations, are able to, fight through and play well. And it's in large part because of those two guys. So they both get a point. So that gives the total to Minnesota 7, Green Bay 6. Who do I think wins this game? I think this is a tough game. I think this is going to be a hard-fought game. But I'm going to take the Minnesota Vikings. I just think that they've played much better against some pretty difficult situations. Like, I don't think any of us expected Sam Darnold to come out and play the way he has. The only wild card here is if Jordan Love comes in and just lights it up like he did to end last year, that could do it. But I got to see him coming off a knee injury. So I'm going to go with Minnesota, but Green Bay certainly has a shot there. Pittsburgh and Indy. This is another weird game. So Indianapolis, the Colts get the home team advantage. And then quarterback, Justin Fields, Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson has a ton of potential. He's very athletic. And even with all that, I'm going to take Justin Fields for one very simple reason. Anthony Richardson is not nearly consistent enough yet. He has got to become more consistent. You've got to make the easy throws, and you've got to make them easily. And while Justin Fields isn't playing out of his mind or anything like that, he is certainly not making the mistakes that are going to cost Pittsburgh anything, and Anthony Richardson has. So I'm going to take Justin Fields, even with the upside of Anthony Richardson and the acknowledgement that if we see him on a day where he plays outstanding, that will probably make the Colts very difficult to stop. But we have not seen it yet. Running back, Najee Harris and Jalen Warren against Jonathan Taylor. I would rather have Jonathan Taylor, so I'm going with the Colts. Wide receivers, these are similar receiving cores in terms of they both have one number one guy. You could probably argue they both have a low-end number one, but a number one. And then a collection of just decent guys behind them. I'm going to give the edge to the Steelers because I think more highly of George Pickens than Michael Pittman. So I'm going to give the edge to the Steelers. Tight end, that's also going to the Steelers with Pat Freiermuth. He is an underrated tight end. He's not necessarily like one of the elite receiving tight ends in the league, but he is a very, very solid player. And certainly not a weakness by any standard. And the Colts just don't really utilize the guys at that position. Offensive line, however, that's Colts all day, and that's not even close. Every single guy on the Colts offensive line has played well. Every single one of them. And the Steelers, it's kind of the opposite, other than their right guard. So Colts definitely take it there. Defensive line, that's Steelers all day. All damn day. Herbig comes in, plays really well for Highsmith when he got hurt. TJ Watt. We all know that. Cam Hayward's playing elite as well. And then linebacker, neither one of these teams has a hugely strong linebacking core, but because of Zaire Franklin for the Colts, I'm going to give them the advantage there. Then defensive backs, that's going to Pittsburgh. Their two safeties in particular have played well. Everybody knows Micah Fitzpatrick. And then the corners aren't playing awesome for the Steelers right now, but when your safeties are, you can cover up some of it. The Colts are just very young in the secondary, and they're still figuring out that group. And then head coach, I think Shane Steichen's actually a very good coach, but Mike Tomlin is one of the best 5 coaches in the league. Sometimes I would even argue to the detriment of the Steelers organization, because I've come to the point of like, for the Steelers to get to where they would really like to be, they probably have to be bad for a year or two, and Mike Tomlin just refuses to let that happen, and which is a credit to him. All right, Denver going to the Jets to take on Aaron Rodgers. Jets get a home team advantage, and then Bo Nix against Aaron Rodgers. We don't need to do a whole lot of elaboration there. Aaron Rodgers. Javonte Williams, Breece Hall. Javonte Williams is a good, powerful runner, but Breece Hall is a different type of beast. So Breece Hall. Receivers, Jets. I think that they are kind of similar in that they don't have particularly deep receiving cores, but with Cortland Sutton and Garrett Wilson being the number one for each team, but Garrett Wilson's just better. And I'll take the Jets. Tight end, same thing. Neither one boasts like a monster at the position, but Tyler Conklin has played much better than Greg Dulcich, and so the Jets get the advantage there. Offensive line, this is the Jets as well. Outside of Quinn Miners for the Broncos, who's a very good guard, the Jets are just across the board much stronger. So they get that. Defensive line, I'm actually going to give them both a point here. Not everybody would probably think that, but Jonathan Cooper and Baron Browning are quite good for the Broncos. And the Jets obviously have guys like Quinnen Williams and a whole deep rotation beyond him. So so they both get a point there. Linebacker, Unfortunately for the Broncos, Alex Singleton is out for the year after tearing his ACL last week, or they would both get a point here. But he's out, so the Jets get the advantage. Quincy Williams is a very good linebacker. I think C.J. Mosley might be missing this game, but even so, Quincy Williams by himself is very good. Then defensive backs, I'm giving them both a point. Pat Surtain, Sauce Gardner are both high-end number one corners. The safeties for both teams are playing well, and overall, these are two teams that have good secondaries. Then head coach, this is tough. I know a lot of people are sort of out on Sean Payton, but I still think he's doing well, and he just had a lot to rebuild with the Broncos, essentially, and that takes time. But I'm still in on him, and I'll take him over Robert Saleh. So overall, I got the Jets with the advantage 9-3, and I do think that that's sort of how it's going to play out. I'm not sure that this will be a blowout or anything like that. I think the Broncos can keep it closer than people might think, but I just don't think the Broncos offense is going to have a whole lot of fun against the Jets defense. If they are going to, they have to run the ball. It's a must. It's their only shot, really. You got to be able to run the ball. You can't let the Jets defensive line just pin their ears back to rush the passer. Got to be multidimensional, and if you're not, it's going to be a long day. All right, Philly at Tampa Bay. The Buccaneers get a home team advantage. Quarterback, Jalen Hurts, Baker Mayfield. This is going to be controversial, but I'm going to give them both a point here. Jalen Hurts certainly has name value, but he has not played up to it. Baker Mayfield is playing a bit above what you would think he would, and I'm going to give them both a point because until Jalen Hurts shows me that 2022 was the real version of him, I, at this point, am going to consider that year sort of the anomaly because he's looked much more like he has the rest of his career than that year. So I'm going to give them both a point. Running back, I am not giving them both a point. Saquon Barkley is a player who I predicted to win Offensive Player of the Year. And I'm sticking by that. So I think he gets the point for running back. Wide receivers, they both get points. I'm not sure if Devontae Smith is playing, and I, in fact, would doubt it, but still. I think the Eagles' wide receiver core is dangerous and is as dangerous as any. In fact, let me confirm real quick if Devontae Smith is playing or not for the Eagles. Let's see. It doesn't look like it, and in fact, it doesn't even look like A.J. Brown is playing either. And if that's the case, I might actually change this. Yeah, it says that they're actually both ruled out. So I'm actually going to switch this, and just Tampa Bay gets the advantage. Sorry, Eagles fans, but if Tampa Bay actually had to match your guys at full strength 1-for-1, I'd say it's a tie. But without those two, the Bucs receivers, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, that's a really good duo in their own right. So I'm going to give them the advantage there. Tight end, that's the Eagles. Dallas Goedert's very good. Offensive line, that's also the Eagles. Even without Jason Kelce, they've still played very well across the board. Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata in particular played very, 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 very well. They're both grading out in the top 5 for tackles, which is elite. Defensive line, that's also the Eagles. They aren't playing as well as you think they would, and they're not playing so far above the Buccaneers. But I believe Jalen Carter is a monster, and as a result, I will give the Eagles the edge there, even though he needs to keep his head a little bit better. I mean, we all obviously saw, how he blew up at the end of last week's game, which I respect the fire, but if teams think that they can get him to blow up and start playing wild, they might try to prod at him. Linebackers, this is the Buccaneers. The Eagles are not strong at that position. Howie Roseman does not seem to place much value on it, as they never put a whole lot of effort into upgrading the linebacking core. And then defensive backs, this is also the Buccaneers. I know that people are going to hear some of the names in the Eagles secondary and see first-round picks and things like that. But the Eagles secondary has not played well, and young guys often take time to develop in the secondary. So I'm giving that to the Buccaneers. And then head coach, I am giving this to Todd Bowles. I don't think that he's an awesome head coach. I don't think he's one of the dudes that you're like, okay, we have a full-on advantage or something like that. But I believe that one of the biggest things that could hold the Eagles back this year is Nick Sirianni. I don't think he is a great coach at all, basically. I think that he is very fortunate that Howie Roseman is the GM of the Eagles because I think Nick Sirianni does some unwise things. But I think Howie Roseman is the best GM in football, personally. I know that, there's a lot of arguments for other guys, but I think Howie Roseman's awesome. Okay. Cincinnati at Carolina. Carolina gets a 1-point home team advantage. Quarterback, Joe Burrow, Andy Dalton. I know that everybody we're coming off the Andy Dalton playing awesome week, and we got an Andy Dalton revenge game here against his old team, but I'm still going with Joe Burrow, obviously. Running back, though, I am giving that to the Panthers with Chuba Hubbard. Wide receivers, we don't need to make this too complicated here. The Bengals are much better. Tight end, same deal. The weapons of the Panthers, in my opinion, are their biggest weakness. Offensive line, this I am actually going to give to Carolina. The Bengals haven't played bad necessarily, but they aren't playing awesome. And Carolina has actually played underratedly well along the offensive line. And I think that we saw it last week, and we could see it again this week. Defensive line, they're both getting a point here. Neither one of them is playing really, really great. Trey Hendrickson is definitely a monster for the Bengals. He's playing very well, but beyond that, the rest of the Bengals' defensive line is just playing legitimately bad. And the Panthers might not have a whole lot of stars, but they have dudes that aren't getting bullied. And outside of Trey Hendrickson, the Bengals are. So I'm going to give them both a point. One for being solid, and then with the Panthers, and then one for the Bengals just on the chance that Trey Hendrickson dominates. Linebackers, that's the Bengals. Logan Wilson in particular is very good. Defensive backs, that's also the Bengals. Not so much because they're awesome in the secondary, but because the Panthers are abysmal in it. And then head coach, I don't think Zach Taylor is a great head coach. I think he's kind of like Nick Sirianni. I think in a way he actually holds the Bengals back. But as I said, with rookie head coaches, until I know what they are and get a good feel of them, I can't give them a point here. So I'll give it to Zach Taylor over Dave Canales. So Cincinnati 7 over the Panthers 4. Do I think that's correct? Yes. I also think that Cincinnati has sort of an unspoken advantage here, which is they're desperate. They have to win. If they fall to 0-4, no matter how much we want to say, oh, look at how they've come on in the second half of the year before and stuff like that, coming back from 0-4 is not likely. So I'll take Cincinnati there. Jacksonville at Houston. Jacksonville and Houston. Oh, goodness. Okay, Houston gets a 1-point home team advantage. Quarterback, we're going with C.J. Stroud. Trevor Lawrence is talented, but is not playing like it. And at a certain point, we have to start asking why. Running back, I'll give them both a point here. Joe Mixon's playing well for the Texans, and Travis Etienne's dangerous for the Jags. Wide receiver, this is the Texans all damn day. Brian Thomas is playing well as a rookie, but Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs, it's night and day. Tight end, they'll both get a point here. Evan Ingram's a good tight end for the Jags. Dalton Schultz is a good tight end for the Texans. Offensive line, this is the Texans. If for no other reason than Laramie Tunsil by himself is great, but they also have just a solid group altogether. And the Jags have the opposite, essentially. Defensive line, I'll give them both a point here. Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter are very good for the Texans. And then for the Jags, Josh Hines-Allen in particular is very good, but you also got Trayvon Walker, who is a solid, if unspectacular player, and then Eric Armstead as well. So I think that the Jags have made enough of an investment there that they're formidable. Linebacker, this is the Jags in my opinion. Foyesade Oluokun and then Devin Lloyd in particular have played quite well at the linebacker spot. I think outside linebacker is stronger for the Texans than inside. And when I do the linebacker stuff, I'm mostly thinking about the off-ball guys because in a lot of ways, the outside guys, they play almost as an edge defender, essentially. And then defensive backs, this is the Texans. Derek Stingley's played really well. I believe, they drafted Kamari Lassiter. He's played very well for them also. That's been a very positive surprise. And their corners are playing really good. And then head coach, I'm taking D'Amico Ryans over Doug Peterson. Outside of the Super Bowl year and then his last year in Philly, he's basically been like a 500 coach with one fluke year either way. So I don't think that Jacksonville has the juice to take on the Texans. Not to mention, you talk about momentum. The worst thing that happened for the Jags is the Texans lost last week, and they're going to come back very motivated to win. So with an advantage of 9-4, I think Houston gets it done. All right, Washington at Arizona. This is a sneaky, interesting game. This isn't a game a whole lot of people are going to want to watch, but it's a sneaky one. So home team advantage goes to Arizona. Quarterback, Jaden Daniels. Quarterback, Kyler Murray. I will give them both a point here. I think Jaden Daniels could certainly overtake Kyler Murray, but I can't tell you that he does with only 3 games. Even if the third game was quite impressive, I still believe that we need to show some restraint in how we anoint him, and we have to ask for a little bit of consistency before we start having him hurdle guys that have been overall good when healthy. Running back, though, I'm going to give that to James Conner of the Cardinals. Wide receiver, I'm going to give them both points there. Terry McLaurin and Marvin Harrison have both played well for each team, and then they've been just solid at the other positions without not necessarily another superstar, but just other guys who are playing well. Tight end, that goes to the Cardinals with Trey McBride. Offensive line and defensive line, I'm giving them both points there. Neither one is spectacular, even though Paris Johnson is playing quite well for Arizona. And then defensive line, they both are sort of solid guys without a whole lot of name value and star power across the board. So in the trenches, I think that this will be a game that might be what determines who wins, because when you have two units that are sort of the same or a little up and down both ways, whichever one is up on the day could win. Linebackers, I'm giving that to Washington. Bobby Wagner, Frankie Luvu, like sneaky good linebacking core. Defensive backs, young and inexperienced in both secondaries outside of Budda Baker in Arizona. So I think that they both get points because neither one are playing particularly consistent ball. And then head coaches, Jonathan Gannon, Dan Quinn. I'm going to give them both a point because they're very similar. I think they're going to have their teams in most of the games they play. They're going to be very feisty, though I think that both these teams are probably going to come up on the short end of the stick here more times than their fan bases would want. But I think that this is going to be a tough game, a close game. But ultimately, I am going to take Washington because I believe in what Jaden Daniels is doing. And if he just gives me like a couple more games of how he looked, I'm not expecting how he looked against Cincinnati. That's a game that quarterbacks have very rarely in their careers. But you know what I mean. A couple more games of just showing that he's closer to that end of the spectrum than low end. So I'm going to take Washington, even though I believe Arizona is going to make this a hell of a fight, even though I have Arizona with the advantage 7 or 9-7 as well. New England at San Francisco. San Fran gets the 1-point home team advantage. San Francisco coming off the injury bowl loss to the Rams. They look a little more healthy this week, so we'll see who actually plays. But right now, it's like there's a couple guys that are questionable. Usually, when you're questionable, it means you play, but we'll see. Brock Purdy and Jacoby Brissett. Brock Purdy gets the point easy. Ramondre Stevenson, Jordan Mason. I'm going to give them both a point. Ramondre Stevenson is probably the best player on the Patriots offense, but Jordan Mason has played quite well to start the year for the 49ers. Wide receivers, that's the Niners all damn day. Tight end, also Niners all day. Offensive line, also Niners all day. The Patriots offense just lacks for talent right now, and I think that it's wise for them to not have Drake May in there for that exact reason. They need to get an infusion of talent there before they're going to be able to do that, especially when you're looking at another team that is very talented on the other end of the ball. Defensive line, though, I'm going to give them both a point. Nick Bosa is obviously the best defensive lineman in this game, but Keon White's played very, very well for the Patriots. Javon Hargrave's out for the year with, I believe, it's either a torn bicep or a torn tricep. Either way, he tore one of the muscles in his arm, out for the year. And that's a blow for the Niners. And I think that the Niners defensive line already hasn't been playing great. They're known to be aggressive to try to upgrade when they sense a weakness. So I wouldn't be shocked if at the trade deadline they are making an effort to bring some guys in. So I'm going to give them both a point, but I'm a little bit concerned about both of these units. Linebackers, that's easily the Niners. If Dre Greenlaw was playing, and as he will, I think they said he'd be back somewhere around the mid-year mark. But if Dre Greenlaw was playing, this would be a whole nother matter. But Fred Warner is the best linebacker in football by a mile. And him by himself would win this debate with most teams. So Fred Warner and the 49ers linebackers are certainly better than the Patriots. Defensive backs, though, I'm actually going to give this to the Patriots. Christian Gonzalez, Kyle Duggar, Jabril Peppers. The Niners, like Travarius Ward, has played well in the past, not playing great to start the year. Lenore, there's a lot of hype about him coming out of camp in the preseason. It hasn't started off awesome. And then the safeties are sort of, Hufunga's getting healthy again, and he's good when he's healthy, but we got to actually see and understand if he's back to form. And then Jair Brown has not played awesome in his second year. Not horrible, but not necessarily a strength. So I have to see the Niners secondaries play better before I'm going to just give them points for having name value. Then Gerard Mayo, Kyle Shanahan. I think Gerard Mayo could be a good coach, but we also don't know because he's a rookie head coach, and Kyle Shanahan's one of the best head coaches in the league. So Niners have a 9-3 advantage. They're also coming off 2 losses, which they should be pissed about. I get the feeling that they're going to beat the Patriots, and they might do it soundly, even though I believe the Patriots in general are pretty feisty. So I wouldn't be shocked if that game's a little closer than you'd want, but I think San Fran will win. Okay. Cleveland and Las Vegas. Quarterback Deshaun Watson and Gardner Minshew. I'm going to give them both a point. Deshaun Watson's played very bad, or certainly below what you'd want. And Gardner Minshew, for all his inconsistency, has played inspired at times, especially against the Ravens. So I'm going to give them both a point because they've both been very up and down, even though they both lean on the lower end of the overall quarterback spectrum. Running back, however, I'm going to give them both a point. If Nick Chubb was healthy, Browns fans, this would be yours. But when you got the Browns back up and then the Raiders don't really have a premier guy at the position anyways, I'll give them both a point. Wide receivers, this would be a Raiders win. However, Devontae Adams is not playing in this game. And so with that being said, I'm going to give the advantage to the Browns because I think Amari Cooper is still at least a low-end number one. And with Devontae Adams out, I don't think the Raiders have one of those guys. So I'm going to give the advantage to the Browns because I just believe what the Raiders receivers are going to be asked to do now is more difficult without Devontae Adams. Tight end, that's going to the Raiders. Brock Bowers, I think, is an awesome player. And then Michael Mayer is the backup. So I like that a lot. And then Njoku's not playing for the Browns this week. So that's an easy one. Offensive line, I'm going to give it to both of them. The Raiders' offensive line is playing sneaky good. Colton Miller has been an underrated offensive tackle for years. And the Browns, for all of their accolades, they've started off not playing great along the offensive line to start the year. I suspect they'll round into form, and they might actually have a good game on Sunday. For a reason that I'll explain in a moment when we talk about the Raiders' defensive line. But I'll give them both a point because they both have the potential to be very good, and they both played a little inconsistently outside of Colton Miller for the Raiders. Defensive line, I'm going to give the advantage to the Browns here. And while I usually would say the Raiders' defensive line is actually a strength, Max Crosby is not playing in this game. So Max Crosby and Devontae Adams are out in this game, which scares me a lot for the Raiders. So with Myles Garrett being out there, if you don't have Max Crosby, I got to give the advantage to the Browns. Pretty simply. Linebackers, this is the Browns. JOK is really good. Spillane has played pretty decent for the Raiders, but JOK has played very well for the Browns. DBs, this is also the Browns. The Raiders secondary might be their biggest weakness, and the Browns secondary is at worst a solid group. Then head coach, Antonio Pierce for the Raiders, Kevin Stefanski for the Browns. Stefanski, two-time coach of the year, always has them playing strong. We still don't know what Antonio Pierce is, as this is his first year. So I'm going to give that to Stefanski. And so the Browns have the advantage 8-5. And given that Devontae Adams and Max Crosby aren't going to play, I think that the Browns will probably win this game, and they might be able to do it without having to ask Deshaun Watson to do all that much. Like, they might be able to just ground and pound this game away. So I think this is probably a low-scoring affair that we're looking at, but I think Cleveland just has a more clear route to victory. Okay, Kansas City at the Chargers. Home team advantage goes to the Chargers. This game is really disappointing because the Chargers are just really riddled by injuries, and we'll go through and discuss them. But quarterback, Patrick Mahomes is obviously, you can make an argument, that there's nobody on his level, although I would say that there's like 5 guys that are on the level, but he certainly rises up in moments. But I tend to give these points by tiers of guys, and I don't think Justin Herbert is a weakness for the Chargers. So I'm going to give them both a point there, even though I believe Patrick Mahomes is better. And Justin Herbert is dealing with a bit of an injury, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the Chargers have a weakness at that position. Running back, I'm going to give that to the Chargers, actually. If Isaiah Pacheco was in, this would be a wash, but it's not Isaiah Pacheco. And the Chargers have 2 really good backs with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. So with Pacheco out, I'll say that the Chargers have the advantage here. Receiver, however, that's the Chiefs. Tight end, that's also the Chiefs. Offensive line, this is a disappointing one. If the Chargers' offensive line was healthy, I would tell you that they actually just have the straight-up advantage here. But Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt are not going to be able to play in this game. And with that being the case, that's a huge problem because those two have played elite football to start the year. And without them, I believe the Chargers O-line goes from a strength to a weakness. And the Chiefs' offensive line, especially in the tackle spots, are not particularly good. Their interior is quite strong. And with the Chargers having their 2 guys out, I got to give it to the Chiefs. Defensive line, this is also one where it would be a wash or potentially even a Chargers edge. But Joey Bosa's not playing. So Chiefs get the advantage there too. Linebackers, this would be the Chiefs either way. And then defensive backs, Derwin James has been suspended for 1 game for the Chargers for a hit that I think is not a huge problem. But for whatever reason, the NFL says it is because we are simply in the worst era of football. And the Chiefs have a decent secondary regardless, particularly with Trent McDuffie. So I'll give them the edge there. Head coach, I'm going to give them both a point here. Andy Reid is considered the best coach in the game right now. But once again, I do this in terms of like tiers in a way, and I don't think Jim Harbaugh is outclassed. So I'll give them the advantage. Chiefs have the advantage 8-4. I think Kansas City is going to win. If the Chargers were healthy, I could see a way where they would be able to do this, but with all the guys they have out, if they were to win this game, it would have to be some sort of implosion by Kansas City or Kansas City gets ravaged by injuries in the game. That's really the only way, because otherwise the Chargers are missing important people. So I'm going to go with that. All right, prime time. Buffalo at Baltimore on Sunday Night Football. Home team advantage goes to the Ravens. Quarterback, Josh Allen. Quarterback, Lamar Jackson. They both get a point. I think Josh Allen's better, but I think that Lamar Jackson is by no means ever a weakness when he's out there. Obviously, being a 2-time MVP. So they both get a point there. Running back, same deal. I think Derrick Henry's better, but I think James Cook is a very good player at that position. So they both get a point. Wide receivers, we're both getting points here again. Mostly because they're built the same. Neither one has a true number 1 receiver, but they both have a stable of guys they run out there to utilize. And I think it works for both teams. Tight ends. I'm a little bit disappointed with how the Ravens tight ends have started. If for nothing else, they've been very inconsistent. Week 1 was Isaiah Likely. Week 2, Mark Andrews had a bit more of a game. Week 3, it was more about the run game. So we'll see what we get from the Ravens tight ends. I'm concerned that Mark Andrews' injury last year is still affecting him in some way. And with that being said, with Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox, I'm going to give the Bills the edge until I see one of these Ravens tight ends playing more consistently. Offensive line, that's the Ravens. I think that they are very good along that group. I don't think the Bills are bad, but the Bills, they're just less premium, I suppose you could say. Tyler Linderbaum's one of the best centers. Ronnie Stanley, when he's healthy, is a very good tackle. And the Bills are just a little bit more the mindset of just don't let it be awful, while the Ravens sort of want it to be a strength because they want to run the ball. And to do that, you have to be strong up front. Defensive line, I'm going to go with the Bills, actually. Because, once again, they're built similarly, but I think the high end of the Bills is better than the Ravens. Nnamdi Adebuike for the Ravens is a very good defensive tackle, but the Bills, when they field Greg Russo and Von Miller on the edges, play very well. Linebackers, this is the Ravens. If Matt Milano had not, gone on IR before the year even started, you might be in a position where they're tied, but Roquan Smith is one of the best linebackers in the league as well. And sort of like the Fred Warner thing, against most linebackers and linebacking cores, he by himself is like worth the lot. So I'll give that to the Ravens. Secondary, that's also Baltimore. I think Baltimore's secondary is one of the best. Kyle Hamilton's one of my favorite players in the entire league. And then head coach, Sean McDermott, John Harbaugh. I'm going to give them both the edge, even though I think they're both getting a point, even though I think a slight edge goes to John Harbaugh. So I think that's a big one. So in total, I have the edge with Baltimore 8, Bills 6. However, I'm going to take the Bills. I think that the Bills are just playing better ball right now, plain and simple. The Ravens played well enough to get up on the Cowboys, who have the worst run defense in the league, but I got a feeling that the Bills just have this. I wouldn't be shocked if Baltimore got this, especially at home, but I think that the Bills are playing very good football, potentially the best in the entire league right now. So until I see them take a fall in a way, I'm going to think that they have a really good chance of beating anybody. Then Monday night, we got a Monday night doubleheader. And it is amazing how contrasting these two games are in terms of intrigue. First one, Tennessee at Miami. Miami gets the home team advantage. Quarterback, we got Will Levis against Tyler Snoop Huntley. I'm going to give it the advantage to Will Levis, I guess. Snoop Huntley has played well in spots for Baltimore when he was the backup there, but I need to see him as a Dolphin before I know what he is there. And, it's not inspiring by any means to pick Will Levis, but I don't know what he is, what Snoop Huntley is for the Dolphins. So until I do, I can't give him any point. Running backs, that's Miami. Wide receivers, that's Miami. Tight ends, I'm going to give them both a point here because neither one of these teams really uses their tight ends that much. Offensive line, I'm going to give that to the Titans. Their left side is just better on the whole, even though their right side is not. And then the Dolphins, Teron Armstead is just a health risk. He's in and out of the lineup so consistent. Like, when he's out, they are bad. And when he's in, they're pretty decent. But I can't trust the health of Teron Armstead. Defensive line, I'll give that to Miami, especially because Jeffrey Simmons is listed as doubtful. So if he plays, he's compromised, or he doesn't play, in which case the whole unit is compromised. Linebackers, that's Miami. Not because they're awesome, but because the Titans linebackers are just playing bad. DBs, this is also Miami. And then head coach, this is also Miami. So I have the Dolphins with 8-3 advantage, and I'm going to say they win, but I don't know. This is one where how bad are Miami's injuries at quarterback really going to be the thing that affects them? If if Snoop Huntley plays well, Miami should win going away. If it takes him some time to get integrated, this could be closer than you'd want. So, I don't know. I'm not particularly interested in this game because I think in a lot of ways, Tennessee has a chance because of Miami's health, and I think that it's unfortunate. But I'm still going to go with Miami. And then the other one's a very good game, the complete opposite. So I am going to go with, I'm going to go with. Sorry, guys. So Seattle at Detroit. Detroit gets a 1-point home team advantage. Geno Smith, Jared Goff. I know that Geno Smith's a fun story, but I prefer Jared Goff on the whole. So I'm going to take him, even though I don't think he's a world beater necessarily, but I do believe he's better than Geno Smith. Running backs, if Kenneth Walker was not playing, this would go to the Lions straight up, and I think the Lions guys are still better, but the Seahawks duo of Walker and Charbonnet is certainly formidable. Wide receivers, both teams get points. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown's the best receiver in the game, or at least in this game. And I think DK Metcalf's very good, and I think that these are both deep receiving cores as well. So these are two of the better receiving cores in the league, so they both get points. Tight end, that's the Lions. Offensive line, that's the Lions. Defensive line, this would normally be a bit more competitive, but the Seahawks defensive line is basically missing its starters. Boye Mafe is not playing. Uchenna Nwosu is not playing. Byron Murphy's not playing. It's basically the Seahawks' backup offensive line against the best offensive line in the league with the Lions, so that'll be interesting. And Aiden Hutchinson's a monster. Liam McNeil and DJ Reed are really good on the inside for the Lions' defensive line. So they get the point. Linebackers, this is also the Lions. DBs, that's the Seahawks, and pretty definitively. So if the Seahawks secondary really locks up, that's going to be their chance to score. And then head coach, we don't know what Mike Macdonald is, even though I actually have some optimism that I think he's a pretty good coach. I just need to see a little bit more before I can give him a point over Dan Campbell. So Dan Campbell gets the point. So I got the Lions with a 9-3 advantage over the Seahawks, health being a pretty decent part of it. I do believe Detroit's going to win, but I believe Seattle's creative enough defensively that this is going to be a close game. And I think Detroit wins, not going away, but definitively enough. So that is my predictions for week 4 of the 2024 NFL season. If you agree with me, let me know. If you disagree with me, I'm sure you'll let me know. So hit like, hit subscribe, share the video, and have a great Sunday, everybody. Peace.